Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to today's session of SecPod's Intelligence Series. And decide to cover an interesting vulnerability today. We'll talk a little bit on that, as well as we'll have um, a brief discussion on what the vulnerability is about and other stuff. And before I proceed with that, I wanted to do a quick introduction. My name is Jagsir. I handle marketing and product evangelism at SecPod, and I have Veerendra with me, who directs the security intelligence team, and I also have Pooja with me today, and she heads the security intelligence team. Uh, Welcome and thanks, Viru. Thanks, Pooja. And thanks for joining me today on this talk.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Jagsir.
So
Thank you.
everybody, we are going to talk about ProxyLogon today, and ProxyLogon was the most infamous vulnerability discovered in 2021, and it's one of the vulnerabilities that exploits exchange proxy architecture and logon mechanism, and we uh, thought that it would be a nice topic for our audience to delve a little bit deep into. So I'll quickly talk about what's the agenda today. So we're going to talk about what are MS Exchange vulnerabilities. We're going to talk about uh, what's proxy logon vulnerability in MS Exchange servers, and then its impact on server on businesses. We are also going to discuss how enterprises and organizations can build defense against proxy logon and other MS Exchange exploits. And then we'll keep it open for a brief Q&A. Any questions that you might have. We'll discuss them towards the end of the session. However, you can keep posting your questions in the chat box, and we'll take all your questions and discuss them towards the end of the session. So, okay, with that, my first question to you is to you, Vedu. Um, can you tell us a little bit about what's proxy logon? Why was it discussed so much? And if you can help us understand MS Exchange vulnerabilities and shed some light on that.
Sure, Jackson. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Veerendra. I head the security research and intelligence team. Uh, so let's try to understand why email servers are so critical and why threat actors are always try to hack the email servers. Uh, what they will get if they are successful in hacking email servers. So first thing is like they can read and copy emails. So what happens if they can read and copy emails? We all know that 99% of the organizations will have a sensitive information in the emails, such as confidential data, business secrets, sometimes credentials as well. And many organizations do not encrypt their emails. We have seen employees or administrators sharing credentials or license keys such as critical data over email. If the emails are not encrypted, then the threat actor can read those emails and use them for malicious purpose. Uh, that's one of the reason we are these email servers has to be protected, so they can read complete email. They have access to all the emails when they are able to get their threat actors get their hands on those email servers, so which will lead us like a lot of issues like these things. And emails are like gold pots for the threat actors, so they always try to search these gold pots everywhere and always. So that is number one. And next is what is the impact or how they can uh, uh, how they can attack these things, or what they will do after getting the hands on these systems, these servers. So they can install backdoors, ransomware, keyloggers, web shells, etc. So the main purpose of installing backdoors is to get easy access to these servers later stage. We have seen many times threat actors exploit vulnerabilities, then they install backdoor and wait for weeks or sometime months, so that they can so that they can come back anytime. Why they wait for a week or month? You guys can ask. The reason is, uh, when the vulnerability gets published, and the threat actors attack those servers and get hold of it and install the backdoor, and they don't do any activity, because it will trigger an it is possible to trigger, it will trigger the alerts to the administrator. So they will wait silently unless the admins think that there is a vulnerability, and they will patch those vulnerabilities. Then they will administrators will think like, okay, the vulnerabilities has been solved. Now uh, uh, the email servers are safe enough. That is the mindset every person will have when they install the patches. But if it is a 0 day or vulnerability, and it doesn't require any authentication in such a things, it's possible that the threat actors are already inside your email servers, and they will wait for it. Once you patch it, then they will take charge and come back and silently listen or capture all the data. Again, it depends on the threat actors, what is their intention. If their intention is to steal the information, then they will keep silent, and they don't do much noise. And if they want, as they are inside the servers, they will try to scan other any other servers are in the same network, and try to again jump into those servers. So that is what they will try to do. And coming to, if a threat actor is very furious, what he will do is he will install a ransomware, as these servers are very much critical. So he will encrypt the whole data or the whole server itself, and he will ask for a ransom, as the uh, similar to any other ransomware attack. So, but here it's a critical data is there. That's a reason, if organization don't have a backup of these data, then it is possible that they are not going to get back this data. So that is what they will do. And one more interesting aspect, when they get when they attack these services, like advanced social engineering attacks. So everybody knows, like, so in social engineering attack, normal they will send a spam email, and if employees are trained enough, they will be able to identify spams, and they will be able to just delete, or not take no action, or not reply. But in this case, what things can go very wrong way. The reason is, the threat actor is in the whole the email server is are in the hold of threat actors. So what he can do is, there is a chances like he can log into inbox, some assume high value person like CEO or CFO. He can log in as the persons, and he can send out a mail to a finance department or an employee, asking to transfer money or to do malicious actions, as the mail is coming from a, authorized account. uh, the department, finance department or an employee just follow their instructions. This happens because most of the time people don't sign the many times we have seen very less people sign emails. So if it is not signed, and also sometimes employees also don't verify, is it you will, every mail, every person will not verify the digital signatures also. So that is also one thing. And also sometimes they will ignore those digital signature even though if it is there not there. So that is also possible. So they will just follow the instructions given there. So these things are possible. This is an example in to give an real time examples. During last year, we even one of our employee also got an email saying that this is urgent from they act as a CEO. The name will come like CEO's name and the email ID. But email ID was, of course, in this case, the email ID was like a unknown email ID, and it's the mail is mentioned like to transfer the money to a, or Google Pay or certain things. Do a payment to a certain account by end of today. That's what the mail was mentioned. And luckily our employee found out that it might be a fake one. She didn't recognize initially the uh, email address, but she observed that this is a mail, but looks like it was a suspicious. So she pinged our CEO and find out it's a mail. Then we figured out, okay, it's a properly crafted mail asking about the transfer money. Take in this case, we are able to find out that from the email ID, we are able to find out it's a non-genuine account, and there are ways to send a mail as if the mail is coming from the genuine person. So if email servers are compromised, then it is very easy for them. And next, to give one more example, how what actor can use these emails is like they can read the emails, they have all the conversations, and they know the context based. Like client need to do a payment to a organization, so such a things the threads will be there. They exactly know what context and everything, and that time when the client need to make a payment or for a due, then they can reply with those captured account and ask clients or customers to uh, do a payment on the different account instead of these things. If clients are agreed and there is a process, proper process, then this kind of things can be caught. But many times we have seen we just follow if the mail is coming from a CFO or CEO, the client or customers, they will just follow the instructions given in the mail. So these are the few examples where things can go wrong, and these are the few reasons why attackers are always trying to get access to email servers, especially the ones which don't require any authentication, and especially the vulnerabilities which don't require any authentication. Such vulnerabilities are very very critical, and they can cause a lot of trouble with respect to business or many very various aspects. And let's try to understand, these are the few things. Let's try to understand with respect to Microsoft Exchange servers, how from last 5 years, how the vulnerabilities, how many vulnerabilities got discovered. This will give a little insight on like what kind of vulnerabilities are discovered from last 5 years, and how the trend is going. We can see in this chart the vulnerability count is getting increased every year in MS Exchange servers. The less severe vulnerability count got reduced, as you can see, from 7 to it came to 2 from 2016. In between it increased, but again it got decreased. But the high and critical vulnerability count got increased. So let's go a little deep into it. Okay, this chart talks about a high vulnerability and a critical high severity and critical severity vulnerabilities count for the same Microsoft Exchange servers. So as you can see, 2018 and 19 only the count remains constant. The number of vulnerabilities found were only 4 and 2, and in 2020 there were total high 8 there are total 8 high severity vulnerabilities and 2 critical vulnerabilities. And from there, if you take now, this is we are in the middle of this year 2021, and still we need to go halfway, and we can see that we already reached like crossed last year count, which is like 11 high severity vulnerabilities and 4 critical severity vulnerabilities. So this will give the little bit insight on, like, these are the vulnerabilities people are behind. Like it could be there could be various ways. uh, One is, some people find vulnerabilities for bug bounties. Some people find vulnerabilities to make money by disclosing the information properly. But there are cases where people find these kind of vulnerabilities, and they don't disclose, but they will try to make money using various other ways. That is unethical way. So that is what these things will give us the picture. So let's try to understand a little bit, go in depth and try to understand, as today's topic was ProxyLogon. Let's try to understand a little bit brief about what is ProxyLogon, and a little story on how it started and all the timelines and etc. So at the beginning of so what is ProxyLogon? To start with, what is a ProxyLogon? It's a let's understand, like, at the beginning of March 2021, Microsoft released patches for 4 0 days vulnerabilities. Among those 4 vulnerabilities, ProxyLogon is one of them, and it is among 4 0 day vulnerabilities, this is one of the critical one. And ProxyLogon is a generic name for a specific vulnerability, uh, that which have a CV identifier as CV 2021 26855. So that's a vulnerability identifier for this ProxyLogon. This ProxyLogon is a basically SSRF attack, which is server-side request forgery vulnerability, which and most importantly, this vulnerability, to exploit this vulnerability, it doesn't require any authentication. So that's a major concern. Using this vulnerability, attacker can bypass the authentication and gain access to admin. That's the reason this vulnerability is so critical. Critical. So, and this affects almost Microsoft Exchange servers 2013, 16, and 2019. Even this is so critical that even Microsoft released for Exchange Server 2010 also, they released a patch. Even though it is end of life, they decided to release a patch for that. Now, let's try to understand the story behind, a little bit of story of this timeline. The whole story started when the dev core started research on Microsoft Exchange Server in October 2020. By December end, they discovered 2 vulnerabilities. One is ProxyLogon vulnerability, which we can see in the chat on December 10th, and one more on the 30th December vulnerability, which is like a another vulnerability, arbitrary file write vulnerability. So they informed the Microsoft about these vulnerabilities, and Microsoft acknowledged these vulnerabilities on 6th Jan. 6th Jan, as we can see in the chat. But just before that, 6th Jan 3rd, Velocity observed that there is an exploitation going on Microsoft Exchange servers. That's on the Exchange servers. On 27th, there was a widespread scanning and possible exploitation of these Microsoft Exchange servers. And on March 12th, Microsoft disclosed that there is a state-sponsored Chinese hacking group targeting these Microsoft servers, and they call it as HAFNIUM. So that is when they decided, Microsoft decided that okay, they the earlier plan was to release those patches during the patch Tuesday, which is second Tuesday of every month. But due to these all activity and wide scanning exploitation, these are happening, they decided to release on March 2 as a out of band security patches for this vulnerability. So on March 9th, we can see the public POC was available. As soon as the public POC was available, so everybody who don't understand much technical also, or don't have a knowledge on reversing the patches and getting the POC done, they were able to use and update this POC directly and try to attack. And during this March, mid or end of the March, there were a lot of exchange servers got hacked. So stats on those things will get back soon in the later stage. So these are the things which happened during this ProxyLogon vulnerability. And this is a most critical and widely exploited vulnerability till now for this year. So last year we know that SolarWinds was one of the major vulnerability, and attack happened. And this year we can consider till now this is one of the most critical vulnerability. So over to you, Jaxi.
Uh, Fantastic. So, Viru, you talked. Thanks for that overview, and that was really interesting to know that how organizations can be affected via these vulnerabilities, and then what should be done, what should be protected. And yes, as you mentioned, and often organizations pay less attention to what's going on within their environment, and email servers are, I mean. Obviously, I mean, it's not easy to ignore, but yes, once ignored, it can really impact an organization in a very adverse way. So, I mean, you talked about this, Viru, and one thing we wanted to understand from, I think Pooja can shed some light on that one, is how threat actors are using vulnerability, proxy logon vulnerability. Pooja, would you like to share with us a little bit on how exactly threat actors are exploiting this vulnerability?
Yes, Jaxi, thank you. So basically, I would start off with now just showing an exploit chain as to how these vulnerabilities are being combined and being exploited in the wild. So first vulnerability, which Viru already spoke about, which is a very critical vulnerability. It is a server-side request forgery vulnerability. This actually lets any attacker just send HTTP request to port 443 and log in as the Exchange server itself. Once the attacker has authenticated himself as Exchange server, he can use various other vulnerabilities that exist in Exchange server and go on exploiting Exchange server further. So the other two issues are post authentication right vulnerabilities. These are the two CVEs, which is 26858 and 27065. So once the authentication is done because of the SSRF vulnerability, an attacker has complete access to the Exchange server machine. He can go ahead and write any location in the machine. It may not be only where the Exchange server is installed. It can be any particular location, any location that he chooses to. What is the advantage here? So if there is an antivirus running and the attacker is able to understand which are the paths that are excluded from being scanned, he can actually go ahead and write files there to be undetected. So basically, these two vulnerabilities are being used to drop web shells on the machines, which are then further used for further compromise. Another vulnerability that existed is in the service, Unified Messaging Service. This service is not generally installed, so it might be only a less number of Exchange servers might be vulnerable to this. But again, This deserialization vulnerability allows an attacker to elevate himself to a system level privilege. In a Windows machine, system level is the highest privilege anybody can have. So he can go ahead and execute any command that he wishes to. So post getting the access at system level, he goes ahead and runs arbitrary commands and then uses that to continue the exploits. So I'll just go ahead and share few of the known attacks that have been happening. Before that, I'll just talk about the themes that are being used in different attacks. So especially against the Exchange server. The main first would be web shell. So this is being implanted on victim machines, and the attackers try to maintain a high profile and are trying to change the name of the web shells or hashes so that they can have persistent prolonged access and are not detected by any tools. Another thing that we are observing is human operated ransomware that is being seen a lot in the Exchange attacks that is happening. So it's not like an automated ransomware that tries to spread in the network without having the knowledge. Here, these ransomware exhibit extensive knowledge of system administration and common network security misconfigurations. They adopt to whatever is discovered in a compromised network and then go on compromising further machines. This is another, and then we see stealing credentials, though this may not have been the initial intent, but since Active Directory is installed on the same machines, and once you get access to a domain administrator account, it is like you can actually get passwords and secret keys for all the other accounts in the network. So it allowed attackers to steal credentials present on the system as well as in the network. So next we would actually go through the tools, techniques, tactics and procedures that are being used in MS Exchange vulnerabilities. So the first ransomware that came into picture after the HAFNIUM apt group was DijoCrypt or DijoCrypt ransomware. This was a new ransomware campaign trying to exploit the Exchange vulnerability. So how do they go about exploiting is they would drop web shells, and this web shells, once dropped into the victim machine, download xx.bat file, which is this bat file goes ahead and dumps the security account management database. So it tries to retrieve all the domain credentials and password and secret keys from that machine, along with any critical registry heights that it needs. It creates a dump. Once the dump is obtained, it actually packages it. Uses makecap to package it, and then it is exfiltrated to a remote server. Also, this and other exploit kits have been creating scheduled tasks in the compromised machine to be able to regularly contact the command and control server, which is sitting remotely, and receive payloads from various servers. So some of the features of this ransomware are it encrypts the victim files and changes file headers to include the string DijoCrypt. The web shell creates, as I already shared, a batch file chopper that allows attackers to move laterally inside the network and steal the credentials from the compromised system. And mainly this ransomware is known to create a Windows service named MS Update. Once it has encrypted all the files, this service gets removed. So if we are tracking and trying to figure out if this is the ransomware that we have tried that is attacking our Exchange server, it would have created a process called MS Update, which is then removed. Next, the ransom botnet that was actually attacking the Exchange server was the Lemon Duck botnet. So this it uses direct shell command execution against most other attackers, like most other attacks that are happening. All other exploit kits have been dropping web shells and then trying to exploit further, but Lemon Duck basically used PowerShell commands and continued exploitation. This is not a new botnet that has come into picture. They have just included exchange vulnerability into their kit. So these were previously employed exploits for SMB Ghost and Eternal Blue vulnerabilities. What this botnet does is it downloads Cobalt Strike DNS beacons. So Cobalt Strike is a commercially available penetration testing tool. So it sends out beacons to understand the network if there are any issues in the network which can help in further compromise. And it also has been known to historically been known to exfiltrate data and deliver malware. So this is the flowchart that would show us how basically a lemon duck botnet functions. So it directly runs PowerShell commands to download the PowerShell payloads. Once it has downloaded the payloads, it creates a scheduled task or a WMI event to ensure that it persists further. Apart from that, also it tries to contact a remote server, which would repeatedly keep sending commands or payloads. Along with that, it also downloads Ramit tools. Ramit was basically a malware that used to help in getting banking credentials, and RAT is like remote access tools, so that our machines, our victim machine can be accessed remotely. So these were being downloaded by the PowerShell payloads. Then after that, it was also observed that they were sending emails with lemon duck payloads, as Viru already explained in the initial stages, where you can actually send mails to all the other people claiming to be a different person. But here, since you already have access to the Exchange server and all the credentials, you can spoof to be an actual user who's sending the mail. So this is also observed from lemon duck. Another important feature that others are not doing, but this particular botnet has been doing, is it removes the other attackers. So there were instances where it was observed that it went ahead and deleted the web shells that were created by a different attacker, and it mitigated the SSRF vulnerability so that no other attacker could exploit it further. So this ensures that this botnet would completely have exclusive access to that victim machine. The third ransomware that has been exploiting Exchange server is the Pydomer ransomware. This again is a known ransomware that was previously attacking Pulse VPN vulnerabilities. Here again, this ransomware drops web shells into the victim machine. It downloads the PowerShell to get so that PowerShell payload, so that it can identify what again is present in the network. It tries pinging to different machines and tries connecting to the different machines in the network using PowerShell or WMI. Once it has access to those machines as well, it goes ahead and encrypts files and then leaves a message like a ransomware message. Similarly, if it's unable to extort the other machines, it would go ahead and exfiltrate the data from this machine. If encryption was not possible, then it exfiltrates the data from this machine to a remote machine and then leaves a ransomware note. So yeah, this was basically a human operated ransomware which manually installed, and it understood the entire network and went further. It used to extort targets by threatening to release the stolen data. Even it's not only like encryption was used, even non-encryption extortion techniques were being used with this ransomware. Web shells have been spotted. This web shells were specifically spotted on 1,500 machines, but majority of them have not gone to the stage of ransomware. So it obviously means that an attackers plan to get back to these vulnerabilities in future. And currently it is limited. It has not, majority of the cases have not reached the ransomware stages. I think it is named Pydomer because it's a Python script compiled into a Windows executable. It encrypts the file using .daemon extension.
Okay. So Pooja, that was also, interesting. And so, what At this point, I think what comes to my mind is how do we build defense against these attacks, or I mean, or exploits, or how do we remediate these vulnerabilities?
Yes, here I would just want to show our product on how we can remediate Exchange server using a product, and also identify if there is a vulnerability, a similar vulnerability that exists in the environment. So just a second, let me share my screen. Jaxir, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, Pooja, you can see your browser.
Say now, yeah. So I would first want to show the Exchange server vulnerabilities, how you can know if a critical vulnerability exists in the environment. So I'm going to the VM page, which is vulnerability management page. Here you can see the high fidelity attacks. One second. Okay. Okay, let's assume that this is the Exchange server vulnerability. So we would show up the MV in this format. So it would say that there is a ransomware called Scam Club group, which is trying to exploit the Exchange server vulnerability. So I would here you can go through the details about those MV. You can actually understand what exactly it is trying to do, what are the issues that exist in this machine, and whatever we discussed so far as part of our webinar can be checked here. So if you want to understand what a particular what a particular malware is trying to do, you can actually go through here and get into it. So if I want to remediate one of them, I would just choose this. You can here come to each of those vulnerability management page. You can go to any of the CVEs, actually click on this links. And here you can see the details about that particular vulnerability, understand what that vulnerability is trying to do. Basically, this particular CV, you can understand what this particular CV is about. This particular link is about is our repository link, which hosts we have SCAP content uploaded in this in our repository. We are the largest SCAP provider in the world, so it is this intelligence that is fed into the which is fed into our product and used for scanning various devices and identifying vulnerabilities in them. So if I want to patch a critical vulnerability, I can actually come here, choose most critical patches. So here we can see Exchange server vulnerability that is being listed. You can see the KB that is listed. So you can choose it, applied selected patches. And select the time whether you want it to be immediately applied or you want to take it up later on. You can also, there are various other settings that you can take, like whether you want to reboot the machine now or take it up later. Remediation by when it should be completed, because it should not affect your work. If you want to give a notification to any customer who is using the machine, then you can actually go ahead and add the message here. Then remediation scripts, if you want to run something before the job, or if you want to run something after the job, you can go ahead and add here. if there are test environments where you want to install these Exchange server vulnerabilities and understand whether it is going to cause a problem, you can actually go ahead and do test and deploy. You can choose the machine and then test and deploy first on the on the test environment, and then come back and try on the actual machine. So you can see, just apply selected patches. So it would create a job which can be used for remediating Exchange Server 2013. So if I were, we can actually come here and whatever I discussed to you about identifying the vulnerability. So this is the vulnerability page. So 26855. I can click on this CV. The CV would again take me to the SCAP repository link, from which you can actually understand what is the CV about. You can get the details on its CVSS course. You can actually go down and check further links that are present. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Over to you, Jagsir.
Yeah, thanks, Pooja. I think that was interesting. I mean, being able to discover this vulnerability and then be able to patch, I guess, that solves a lot of problems uh, for admins with an integrated system. So, having this product right available with them, uh, do you think that's all needed? Is that the solution that's needed, or um, so what
Yeah.
basically comes to my head is that the final solution,
Yeah, I
and will it
would.
solve all the problems caused by ProxyLogon?
Yes, I would want to go ahead with explaining. So, especially in this vulnerability, or in this case, it is not sufficient to only patch the vulnerabilities, because the attack began much before the patches were released. Even in such cases where you have direct admin access and all the like, you can actually create web shells and you can get system level privileges when such vulnerabilities are being exploited. And we also saw that the attack was very huge from the beginning. So in such cases, more or less, attackers will ensure that web shells or other persistent mechanisms are followed to ensure that they can reach the machines repeatedly. uh, Basically, what an attacker would do today is like, when the vulnerability was made public, is go to the machine, leave the web shells or leave scheduled tasks or leave other traces, so that they can get back to them in later stages, even if the machines are patched. So I'll just tell what are the other steps we can take to ensure that Exchange servers which are live are cannot like, an attacker cannot again get back into our network and continue exploiting or caching on the known vulnerabilities. So apart from installing patches, which we just did now, we would also need to scan the Exchange server machines with various security softwares to understand if there are any new techniques that are being followed to exploit these vulnerabilities, or if there are any others unidentified. So currently we may not know all the so as time has passed from March 3rd till date, there are various other things that have come into picture. Initially, it was believed it was only HAFNIUM group that was exploiting this, and in a particular way. But as time has passed, we have figured out there are various other threat actors who are trying to exploit this vulnerability. So scanning the system to identify if there are any other breaches that have happened would be a good start, where we would identify if there are any issues. Apart from that, there are known IOAs that is published from the Microsoft itself, because a lot of people who have been compromised have provided this data back to Microsoft, and based on that, Microsoft has compiled a list of web shell names, paths where they are installed, um, path where it is installed, along with the MD5 hashes, which can be useful for us. So it is available in a CSV or a JSON format. So we can use those things and actually identify if a similar attack has happened in my environment. And next point would be look for unknown persistent items like unexpected services, scheduled tasks, startup items, unknown remote access tools, shadow IT tools. These are basically the way an attacker would want to continue accessing your machines. So all these, having any service that is not being installed by you or is not supposed to be there, or if there is a scheduled task that is running but which was not there earlier, or there is a startup item or an unknown remote access tool which is not Microsoft RDP or what you are using in your environment, then it is necessary that you start investigating further to know what exactly is going on. Another important point would be reset all admin credentials, because since they are dumping the LSASS memory and the trying to get the passwords or secret keys, it is necessary we go ahead and change all admin credentials if it is being compromised, and also make sure that we randomize them. And if there are any other admin accounts that have been newly created, or if there is a passwordless account, we need to go ahead and ensure that we take care to deal with these things, fix them, and only then we can assume our exchange server is safe. Another important thing that has been observed is an event ID called 1102, which is like if somebody has like in the backend done some activities and then they do not want to be tracked, they go ahead and clear the audit log, in which this event ID would be logged in. If so, if there is a you do see this, then it means there has been an attack. Practice principle of least privilege and mitigate lateral movement. So make sure that generally what happens in exchange servers, to back up various things, we provide admin credentials, and it is those accounts which are causing problems. So Microsoft recommends to ensure that we provide least privileges to the accounts that are being used in exchange server. Check email forwarding settings to identify if mailbox data is being exfiltrated. So if, as again Veerendra mentioned initially, so if there is email forwardings that have happened and it's not from your end, you know that something is acting behind, and your incident response need to identify what exactly caused it and how to what is the action to be taken. So all these need to be taken. It cannot be only installing the patches and we are done and there is no problem here on. It is not that kind of a vulnerability. You need to take all further actions to ensure that your exchange is no more open to, not only your exchange server, the entire network is no more open to exploits.
So that's an interesting checklist of things that admins should follow, Pooja, and thanks for discussing that. And hopefully, I mean, we'll be able to also share this with our audience so that they can maybe follow such a checklist for themselves. That brings us to another section of this talk, and discussing the real impact of MS Exchange vulnerabilities, and specifically ProxyLogon on businesses. And I'll take some time to talk about it. So what we saw is that somewhere between 30,000 to 60,000 organizations have been breached through the exploitation of these vulnerabilities. And among these organizations, we did see that most of these organizations were, of course, were government and defense. And like Veerendra mentioned before, there are various threat actors behind such attacks. And one category of such threat actors are state-sponsored attackers. And that's where we also see attacks, these attacks targeting mostly government and military organizations to steal the information that's most valuable for them. And then after government institutions, we saw manufacturing, banking, and healthcare organizations also being impacted by such vulnerabilities. And since there's a lot of valuable information in email exchanges among these organizations, and that's an interesting thing that we saw. And even when Microsoft released a patch on March 2nd, what we started observing is that there was a 10 times growth in attacks, even after there was a solution available. So that clearly demonstrated how impactful was this vulnerability for threat actors, and how important was it for them keep exploiting this. But yes, on March 8th, um, what was observed that there were still 125,000 um, systems, exchange servers that were unpatched, and they were vulnerable to exploitation worldwide. That number has started coming down after the solution is available, and close to 90% of these systems are patched now. But yet, still there are a lot of systems that needs fixes. And not leaving out what was the financial impact on organizations of these vulnerabilities in this year. We've seen organizations specifically in the North American region and Australian territory lose somewhere between 50,000 to 100,000 in ransom, two-tier cry, and other ransomware. And the main culprit was ProxyLogon vulnerabilities behind these. So that's the impact on businesses that we saw. And then finally, there were a few comments also from the owner of Exchange servers, a producer of Exchange servers, Microsoft, and they did mention that there was, I mean, this Exchange server vulnerability. It was exploiting the port 443, and there are fixes now. And then on March 15, Microsoft released a mitigation tool to detect and patch Exchange server vulnerabilities. And that's all we wanted to discuss around ProxyLogon and some of the, I think, what Pooja mentioned, all those attack, the exploit kits that are attacking these vulnerabilities, and even what we do highlighted. That brings us to the Q&A session. So Veeru and Pooja, I think we have a few questions. Let me just look for them. There are a few questions on, um, okay. So the first question here is, um, okay. First question here is, out of four MS Exchange zero-day vulnerabilities from March, which one is more critical? Veeru, would you like to take this up?
Yes, on March, Microsoft released a total four patches for four zero-day vulnerabilities. In that, ProxyLogon is one of the most important one. The reason behind is that is a first stage where the threat actor can get into the system. Then, utilizing that first vulnerability, which is ProxyLogon, then they can, yeah, utilize other vulnerabilities such as privilege escalations or file write vulnerability to get into the system access level or open the web shell. So that's the reason I think the this SSRF proxy login vulnerabilities are the most critical one. And majorly, if you consider the systems which are facing like server exchange server which are facing the mm, internet, which can be accessed via internet from anywhere, those you can consider those systems are already considered as a compromise. The reason behind is the attack started happening before the solution gets released, and we have seen various attacks, scanning, and all those things. That's the reason proxy logon is the major critical vulnerability of this year. That's what we can say.
Thank you, Vidhu. So another question we have is why did it take enterprises running Exchange servers weeks and months to get the patch in place? I think Pooja, would you like to take this one up?
Yes, Jagsir. So basically, Exchange Server is a core capability of any organization. So there would be fear if there is a downtime or any other issues that are faced. Apart from that, it's not very straightforward to remediate an Exchange server because you need to know which exact cumulative update has to be installed to be able to patch. So even it's not just like cumulative update would patch it. You need to install the cumulative update, which in itself is time consuming, and there are chances it might fail. And then you would need to find the exact KB that has to be installed, and then go ahead and install that as well. So and more often than not, the chances of failure are high, which is why I believe initially most organizations took some amount of time to patch this vulnerability, which gave a time window for threat attackers to go ahead and launch attacks, because once the patches are available, most exploits are created by reverse engineering the patches. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We have another question. Um, there is a question on how ProxyLogon vulnerability affects on on-premise MS Exchange servers, and how should administrator go about it? What should the admin do about it?
Yeah,
Viru, would you like to take that one up?
yeah, yeah. I would like to take that question. So we know that, like, if the exchange server is facing directly to the internet, consider we are saying like, not just we, everybody is saying consider that as that indication, like the your exchange server is compromised. On top of that, then you do investigation, apply patch, and do all the stuff. But if what if the same Microsoft Exchange servers, which is inside premise, or it can be accessed only via intranet, which is from the office network. So such a things are also like should be considered. Those are also very critical ones. In the MS, they are not like breached one. If you compare those in on-premise servers with the public facing servers, you can consider it as less likely vulnerable to or getting exploited by the proxy logon vulnerabilities. But we need to consider that what if sometime we have seen like attacker go to the organization or get into the system step by step. What if the attacker is already inside the network, but he's searching for a system where this kind of vulnerabilities are present, where he can get hold of high targets like email server, such as Microsoft Exchange server in this case. So in that case, I think we the admin has to do little bit of investigation on the on-premise MS Exchange server also, so that he can make sure nothing, no backdoors or no web shells are running on those email servers. But compared to public facing exchange servers, yeah, these are like a little hard to exploit because it requires nobody can access those servers from the outside, only from the internet, from the office network only they can be accessed. That's a reason we should consider this on-premise servers also as a high targets sometimes.
Okay. I think there's another question. Um, do we think Microsoft should give, should keep interactive logins and allow proxy logons? And the fact that the attacker was able to escalate this whole vulnerability without letting the InfoSec team, since Microsoft was unaware about this, what is our overall view on this compromise? Viru, would you like to take that one up? So
Can
what
you
is
repeat? Yeah,
yes?
yeah. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So do we think Microsoft should allow proxy logons and keep the interactive logins, right? And I mean, the fact that Microsoft didn't know that there was an attack going on, right? And this whole vulnerability was not reported to Microsoft. I mean, without letting the InfoSec team at Microsoft knowing. What is our overall view? Should Microsoft block interactive logins and allow proxy logons? Should they not? I mean, should they block proxy logons?
Uh, uh, like Microsoft here, the Exchange server is a product of Microsoft, but they cannot control. Individual organizations has to configure if they want to, even though they need to identify their Exchange server is required to be. It needs to be faced publicly, but they can enable two-factor authentication and various other techniques where it should be hard for the threat actors to, even though there is a vulnerability, they cannot do much. There are various other things also, and also one of the important thing is, even though if it is publicly facing internet server, uh, probably I think they can whitelist the IPs where these servers can be accessed only from that office network or from the specific network. That way it will reduce the impact. But Microsoft can't do anything with respect to this thing, because in future also, not just ProxyLogon, in future also there are possibility, like there might be various other vulnerabilities which nobody knows yet. There might be vulnerabilities which attackers are threat actors are exploiting, but nobody yet know those are getting exploited. But as and when threat intelligence teams from Microsoft or various other organizations, they identify those getting exploited, or they get intel on those vulnerabilities, I think they will take a action, proper action to solve the or consider the attacks, try to reduce the attack surface, and they will, I'm sure, like Microsoft or any other version, they will take all the precautions or mitigation to solve those problems.
Okay. Okay. So we'll wait a couple of minutes for if there are any other questions from the audience. Okay, there are none. So, to everybody, if you have any other questions, you can write to us at info@secpod.com, and we'll definitely connect back with you and respond to your questions. And as Pooja demonstrated, I mean, we do have a platform which we call Sena now Cyber Hygiene platform, and that's capable of discovering vulnerabilities such as MS Exchange server vulnerabilities, and even you can remediate them. And feel free to give it a try. We do have a trial version. So all you need to do is go to www.secpod.com, and you can test and try the platform to fix any of these and discover and fix any of these vulnerabilities. With that, I'll we are towards the end of the session, and I thank you, Pooja and Viru, for such an insightful session, and explaining us what ProxyLogon and MS Exchange server vulnerabilities are. And then I look forward to connecting with you on our next talk.
Yes, thank you,
And
Jagsir.
Thank you, Jaxi. Thank you, everyone.
it was
Yes,
really
thank you,
interesting
everyone.
having you. And to everybody, stay safe and be healthy. Thanks for your time and take care.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you. Bye.